What if I told you the smartest people procrastinate more than everyone else, not because they are lazy, not because they lack discipline, not even because they manage their time badly. For decades, we were told procrastination is a character flaw, a failure of willpower, a sign that you can't get your life together. Fix your calendar, they said, download the right app, wake up earlier, and the delay will disappear. Discipline was framed as the cure, and procrastination was framed as the disease. But the smartest, most successful people tell a different story. Leonardo da Vinci took 16 years to finish the Mona Lisa, wandering off for months at a time to study anatomy, water currents, and the flight of birds instead. Charles Darwin sat on his theory of evolution for over 20 years, filling notebooks in private before he ever let the world see it. Aaron Sorkin, one of the most successful screenwriters alive, has openly admitted he can't start writing until the deadline is breathing down his neck, pacing his apartment instead of typing a single word. So what changed? Not their intelligence, not their ambition, their relationship with delay. Today, I'll show you the habits research shows separate productive procrastination from destructive procrastination, and how history's sharpest minds used delay as a hidden tool long before science could explain why it worked. Habit 1. They let ideas incubate before acting. Your brain doesn't stop working on a problem just because you stopped staring at it. When you step away from a task, your subconscious keeps processing it quietly in the background, running through combinations you never consciously considered. This is called incubation, and it's one of the oldest documented stages of creative thought. Psychologist Adam Grant studied this directly, tracking how people generate ideas under different amounts of delay. He found that people who moderately delayed a task, rather than rushing to finish it the moment it was assigned, generated more original ideas than those who started immediately. Why? Starting immediately locks you into your first idea, the obvious one, the safe one. Delay keeps the door open a little longer. Smart habit. When you feel stuck on a hard problem, don't force it. Step away on purpose and let your mind keep working without you. This is exactly what Da Vinci was doing during those 16 years. He wasn't avoiding the painting. He was letting his understanding of light, muscle, and water reshape how he'd eventually finish it. Habit 2. They use unfinished tasks to stay mentally sharp. Have you ever noticed how an unfinished task nags at you far more than a finished one does? That's not an accident, and it's not just anxiety. It's called the Zeigarnik effect, named after psychologist Bloomer Zeigarnik, who noticed that waiters in a Vienna cafe could recall complex, unpaid orders in perfect detail, yet forgot them completely the second the bill was settled. Open loops stay active in memory. Closed ones vanish almost instantly. High performers exploit this quirk on purpose. They deliberately leave a task slightly unfinished at the end of the day, mid-sentence or mid-thought, so their brain keeps chewing on it long after they've stopped working. Smart habit. Stop working mid-thought, not at a clean finish line. Your brain will pick up the thread for you while you sleep. Habit 3. They know delay can sharpen creativity instead of just dulling it. We assume procrastination always makes work worse. But researcher Jihi Shin, working alongside Adam Grant, ran a study where employees were asked to pitch new business ideas. The ones who procrastinated moderately before starting were rated as more creative by their managers than those who dove straight in. The delay wasn't wasted time sitting on the couch. It was divergent thinking time, where the mind wanders across far more possible solutions before settling on one. Rushing in, by contrast, tends to produce the most predictable answer in the room. Smart habit. For creative work specifically, give yourself permission to circle the problem before attacking it head-on. Habit 4. They follow the 4 stages of creative thought instead of fighting them. In 1926, psychologist Graham Waller's mapped out how real insight actually happens based on interviews with inventors and scientists. Preparation, where you gather information and study the problem. Incubation, where you consciously stop working on it. Illumination, where the answer suddenly appears, often somewhere completely unrelated to your desk. And verification, where you test whether the idea actually holds up. Most people only trust the first and last stages. They treat stepping away as giving up, as wasted time they'll have to make up for later. But the incubation stage isn't laziness in disguise. It's a required phase of the process, not an optional detour from it. Smart habit. When an idea won't come, trust that stepping back is part of the process, not a failure of it. Habit 5. They let deadlines create tension, but they don't fear that tension. Behavioral economist Dan Ariely ran a study with college students given weeks to complete 3 separate assignments. One group set their own spaced-out deadlines at the start of the term. Another group was allowed to hand in everything on the very last day, with no restrictions at all. The self-paced group performed significantly better across the board. But here's the twist that mattered most. Students who understood their own patterns and set deadlines that actually matched how they worked outperformed everyone else in the study. The lesson isn't that deadlines are bad or that procrastination should be avoided entirely. It's that pressure works best when it's chosen deliberately, not imposed by panic. Smart habit: build your own internal deadlines ahead of the real one, timed to how your focus actually behaves. Habit 6. They separate active procrastination from passive procrastination. Not all delay is equal, even though it looks identical from the outside. Researchers Angela Chu and Jin Nam Choi identified two very different types of procrastinators hiding under one label. Passive procrastinators delay because they are paralyzed by indecision, avoidance, or fear of getting started at all. Active procrastinators delay on purpose because they genuinely perform better under deliberate pressure and they still finish comfortably on time. Someone starts late either way, but one type is avoiding the task entirely. The other is choosing exactly when to strike. Smart habit: ask yourself honestly, are you avoiding this or are you timing it? The answer changes what you should do next. Habit 7. They avoid the trap of finishing too early. This sounds backwards, so stay with me for a second. Psychologist David Rosenbaum discovered something he called procrastination, the urge to complete a task as fast as possible, even when waiting a moment longer would produce a clearly better result. In his experiments, participants grabbed a bucket sitting closer to them to carry across a room, even though it meant lugging it much farther, just to feel like they'd already started the job. High achievers learn to resist this exact urge. They tolerate the discomfort of an open, unfinished task instead of rushing just to feel busy and productive in the moment. Smart habit: don't confuse motion with progress. Sometimes waiting is the more disciplined choice, not the lazier one. Habit 8. They redesign their environment instead of relying on willpower. Willpower is unreliable, and it runs out faster than most people expect. Environment doesn't run out the same way. Researcher Katherine Milkman studies a technique called temptation bundling. Pairing a task you keep avoiding with something you genuinely enjoy, so starting becomes far easier than it used to be. Only allow yourself your favorite show or podcast while doing the task you keep pushing off and nowhere else. The task itself doesn't change at all. Your resistance to starting it does. Smart habit: attach one small, specific pleasure to the task you dread most and use it only during that task. Habit 9. They treat themselves with compassion instead of guilt. It feels intuitive to think guilt will motivate you to finally stop procrastinating. The research says the opposite is true. Psychologist Michael Wohl found that students who forgave themselves for procrastinating on one exam were significantly less likely to procrastinate on the next one. Guilt doesn't build discipline the way we assume it does. It builds avoidance, because the task itself becomes tied to shame. And shame makes people run further from exactly what they are trying to avoid, not closer to it. Smart habit: when you catch yourself delaying, drop the guilt first. Self-forgiveness closes the loop faster than self-punishment ever will. Darwin waited 2 decades not out of shame, but because he trusted his own timing more than the world's. That trust is the real difference between a wasted delay and a productive one. So what if I told you the smartest people procrastinate more than everyone else? Now you know exactly why. It was never about laziness, and it was never really about willpower at all. It was about knowing precisely when delay works for you and when it quietly works against you. If this changed how you see the way you work, send it to someone who's been beating themselves up over an unfinished to-do list. And subscribe, because there's a lot more of what actually makes high performers different from everyone else still to come.